Donald Trump has still got a bee in his bonnet about Sadiq Khan. What's he saying now?
It's this bee has never left this bonnet. He's been talking about it for the best part of 10 years. You can say, well, I mean, about this at least the president is extremely consistent. Yeah, look, he's resurrected this. This is part of his sort of wider comments, which he made in an interview with Politico, and it's sort of about the feud with Khan, but it's also about wider things as well. I mean, just on the first bit, the sort of narrow bit. Listeners will know that, there is no love lost between our mayor in this city and the American president, and they've had this ongoing feud. Sadiq Khan has accused the president of being obsessed with him, of living rent-free inside his head, and I think that's reasonably fair. But he's reignited it because Trump has called him a disaster, characteristically undersold as ever, doing a terrible job. He said he's a horrible mayor, he's an incompetent mayor, but he's a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. I think he's done a terrible job. 0345 6060 973. And London's a different place. I love London, but I hate to see it happen. And in particular, what he's done, and this is where it links to the kind of wider critique that the president has been making. Trump has said that basically the only reason why Khan has been re-elected or elected 3 times now, of course, which none of his predecessors were, is because he's made this accusation that lots of people have come in, voted for Khan, and that he wouldn't be there anyway. And this is part of this is where the story gets a bit bigger, because this is
immigrants he's alluding to.
Basically, yeah, he's talking about the kind of wider critique that the sort of cultural right are making in the UK and in Europe and in the United States, which is the idea that Europe is kind of losing itself, is losing its sense of civilization because of these people coming in. Normally they're talking about people from Muslim countries. Indeed, we saw that extraordinary defence document which was published, a sort of national strategic defence review that the or equivalent thereof that the US has done, which basically talked about the idea of civilizational erasure in Europe, that European countries were decaying and weakening to the point of no longer existing as a result of people coming in. These were once deeply fringe ideas confined to the far right. They now find themselves at the centre of international discourse.
It's replacement
with the imprimatur of the president. Indeed it is. That is basically what it's saying, yeah.
And there's also this, as you say, he's saying this, and he's not the only one, about Europe as well. The European sort of psyche is changing. All of that deep history of what Europe actually means in terms of freedoms and values is changing. But he's deciding to blame any of that change on just migrants, is he? That's his take.
It's a mixture of things. Part of it is a kind of... The critique basically goes that European civilization is being undermined both by itself and from the outside. One is, as you say, immigrants, basically. They say, and in particular, people from Muslim countries, they say are fundamentally changing the kind of character of European civilization. But also, and again, you can understand how this chimes with Trump's wider agenda, his argument is that European countries have become weak from within as a result of being too woke, as a result of being soft, as a result of being insufficiently tough in a way that a certain president of the United States might be. So it's a sort of wider critique that, as I say, used to be quite a fringe idea, but now is central. And of course it puts Keir Starmer in a difficult position every single time these little sort of flare-ups occur between Trump and Sadiq Khan, because obviously, Khan is a Labour politician, and Downing Street were asked to defend Khan sort of 24 hours ago. It didn't seem they pulled up the most full-throated defence, obviously very cognizant. They didn't want to be seen to be disagreeing with the president, and have now had to do so in the last sort of 24 hours.
And Sir Ed Davey raised it, didn't he, in Prime Minister's Questions? He wanted to get an assurance from Keir Starmer that he would, not particularly about Khan, but that he would speak to Donald Trump and push back against this idea of European demise.
Indeed so. And I think the darkness of it is this, Sheila, which is that, look, there is no obligation on Donald Trump to be a friend of Sadiq Khan. There is no obligation on him to be a friend of any British politician. If he doesn't like their policies, if he doesn't like what they're doing, fair enough. I think we can all say that Donald Trump doesn't dislike Sadiq Khan because of you, Les. I think what we can say is that if you pushed Donald Trump to come up with a policy that Sadiq Khan has enacted, I'm not sure that he would be able to come up with anything terribly compelling, right? The darkness, I think, or at least the accusation of the darkness, is as follows, which is that people are concerned, and have been for a long time, that Donald Trump is obsessed with Sadiq Khan because he's a Muslim. Indeed, what you can certainly say is that if you look at some of the followers of Trump and the sort of people who sort of pump out sort of pro-Trump propaganda on a daily basis. They are certainly obsessed with the fact that Khan is a Muslim, and that has been linked as well with the fact that Zoran Mamdani is a Muslim, and they go for him on a very similar kind of basis. And it all it all sort of is part, as I say, of this wider dark critique of the idea that basically Muslims are replacing Europeans, are replacing and changing the characters of our cities, that the cities are becoming sort of dirty and bad and full of crime and all of these sorts of things. We've discussed before that our cities, London, is not perfect, but this critique that they are dystopian hellholes is simply outlandish and absurd.
It is. If you're on social media and you see these videos, people going, look what's happened to London, look what's happened to London. It's literally somebody has filmed a corner of a street somewhere and that's it. Am I saying London's perfect or any city's perfect? Of course not. No. But it is extraordinary. I often find myself when I'm walking home or walking down to the tube in the morning or a nice walk at the weekend or whatever it is I'm doing, and I just think
oh my God, it's the apocalypse.
I feel quite safe.
Yes.
I'm aware of pickpockets. I'm aware, that's a big city. That's just normal. I'm aware that you don't have your phone flying out so that people can snatch it from your hands. That's just normal crime awareness. But the idea that London is some pitiful city that is awful to live in is for the birds.
And of course, and we should never, and we certainly don't on this station, you never ever undermine people's lived experience when they've been a victim of crime.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to you that overall crime has gone down and all of these sorts of things.
I'll get my phone nicked on the way home now.
Well, I know, absolutely appalling. But for sure, exactly, there is a complete disconnect between the image that is projected online and in the digital discourse and day-to-day life in cities like London. And as I say, the darkness of that's not just something that's wrong. The darkness of it is that it plays into these themes that somehow, having a Muslim mayor or having senior Muslim politicians is somehow, qualitatively reducing the kind of way of life in these cities, but also as well is in some way undermining European or British or English identity. It never used to be controversial. It would never have occurred, even maybe 5 years ago, for anyone to take issue with the idea that Sadiq Khan is English or that Rishi Sunak is English. And yet now this is something that is actively debated online in this ethno-nationalist politics.
Well, it gives the go home crowd
completely. And for all of our fellow citizens who are ethnic minorities and have every right to call themselves English, just like I do, I think it must be, and in fact I know because you speak to them regularly, this is a deeply disturbing time. Their identities, they are being undermined, and they are being told that they cannot live in this country on the same basis that I do. I think that's deeply disturbing.
And James was talking at the end of his programme today about Windrush and how an awful lot of us have moved on from it, when in fact lots of the people affected by it still don't have their permanence, still don't have their compensation.
We talk about the Overton window, don't we, sometimes, Sheila, which is this idea of kind of the parameters of acceptable politics. If you want a sense of just how far things have shifted, I would say, in a racist direction over the course of even the last few years. Do you remember in 2018 when Donald Trump was alleged to have said in a private conversation, he was alleged to have described certain African countries and elsewhere as S-hole countries? Yes. People can fill in the blank. And he denied it. There was a huge furore about it, and he denied it. And indeed, he actually responded to it by claiming that he was the least racist person who'd ever lived or had ever been interviewed. Trump last night at a rally in Pennsylvania publicly, not privately, publicly said exactly the same thing. He started to describe a series, said, why do we always take migrants from S-hole countries? Why don't we take more people from countries like Norway, from Denmark, Sweden? Wonder why he's got those in mind. By the way, there are plenty of people from ethnic minorities living in those countries, and those countries are very successful. But anyway, leaving that to one side, there was barely a murmur. There was barely any reaction.
And that's because of how far down.
And that is because, and Trump has been central in this process himself, the normalisation of that kind of rhetoric. Many people would talk about racism.
Well, and the normalisation of that. Picked up on the streets.
And being picked on that has proceeded a lot since 2018.